at a clear-cut juncture between past and future. Because of our dynamic heritage, we are in an excellent position to help meet the nation's future energy needs.
It started in 1870 when John D. Rockefeller founded the Standard Oil Company in Cleveland. At its first refinery, before there was a market for gasoline, Standard made kerosene out of crude oil for lamps. During the next 12 years, the company became associated with other firms. By 1882, Standard and 40 affiliated companies were doing almost 90% of all refining of crude oil in the United States.
In 1882, the Standard Oil Trust was created to control the Ohio Company and its 40 affiliates. Standard Oil of Ohio drilled its own wells and produced its own crude from fields near Lima in northwestern Ohio, which was once the state's oil center. Those fields were unable to keep pace with growing demand, and before long they were depleted.
In 1899, Standard Oil of New Jersey became the central holding company that took over all operations under the trust. This reorganization had a big impact on the Ohio Company. Ohio Standard's marketing territory was reduced to within the boundaries of its own state. In 1911, the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the New Jersey Holding Company to give up its control over the Standard companies.
This made Standard Oil of Ohio an independent company with no connection with any other Standard company. Ohio Standard was on its own. It could only market in Ohio, and it owned very little crude oil, a shortcoming that would take nearly 6 decades to correct. But there was a bright spot. Americans had fallen in love with the gasoline engine and cars. Gasoline sales were rocketing ahead, and Standard Oil of Ohio had about 85% of the business.
The company, in the following years, developed and expanded refinery operations and increased gasoline sales through service stations to keep pace with America's growing fleet of autos.
Sohio had built a solid base as a regional refiner and marketer of petroleum products, but with limited crude oil of its own. In the 1960s and 1970s, the company expanded retail petroleum markets into a number of states under several trade names.
Sohio has always been an innovative marketer and has responded to the changing needs of motorists. Back in the 1960s and 1970s, we established sites for service stations and truck stops along the developing interstate highway system. We linked car washes with gasoline sales, introduced gasoline-only gas-and-go stations, self-service, and car care centers offering full mechanical service.
We were even into restaurant and motel services along the interstates. This was a dynamic period. Our strength in marketing gave us the capital and momentum for moves into other energy businesses.
Sohio extended its energy production base into areas of coal, uranium, and diversified into petrochemicals and plastics.
Sohio is a significant supplier of coal used in electric power generation. Coal promises to become an increasingly important energy source for the country, and we continue to develop our coal resources and operations.
Another alternative is nuclear energy. Sohio is operator and half owner of a uranium mine and mill in New Mexico, and the company is exploring for other uranium deposits.
Sohio does 2 things with crude oil. We refine crude oil into petroleum products, and we also convert petroleum into certain petrochemicals.
Chemicals that are manufactured by Sohio are used in pharmaceutical industries, many plastics industries, many textile industries in terms of fabrics. The clothes that I have on are made from chemicals that Sohio supplies.
Sohio revolutionized the worldwide acrylic fiber and ABS plastic manufacturing industries with the invention of a remarkably simple and economic process for manufacturing a chemical called acrylonitrile, which is a basic building block chemical used by those industries.
process has had far-reaching impact on raising the quality of life because it has put countless products within the reach of many people. Sohio licenses the process to companies throughout the world.
Over the last 20 years that I have followed the fortunes of Sohio, I remember when they were a small regional refiner that was very short of crude, and now having affiliated with British Petroleum and controlling very large reserves in Alaska, they are probably the #2 producer of crude oil in the United States and the #1 in terms of crude oil reserves. And I think the transformation is probably more dramatic than at any other oil company in the history of the oil industry.
Sohio owns leases containing more than half of the proven oil reserves at Prudhoe Bay, Alaska. The problem became one of getting that oil to market. We joined with 7 other energy firms to form a company called Alyeska to build the Trans-Alaskan Pipeline, which spans Alaska from Prudhoe Bay 800 miles south to the port of Valdez. The project was the biggest construction job in the history of private enterprise.
For Sohio, the Alaska venture was an incredibly daring and risky gamble. We borrowed an enormous amount of money. We borrowed an amount of money that would have stretched most companies right to the breaking point. And we pulled it off. Throughout the company, there was a great deal of excitement and a tremendous sense of adventure. It was a very exciting time to live through because the company put everything on the line.
At that point, vast amounts of cash had to be spent on both the development of the field and the Alyeska pipeline. Of course, none of us realized at that time how vast these amounts were going to be and the risks that were going to be incurred.
Well, there were monumental environmentalist and regulatory problems that were encountered, and it delayed the construction of the pipeline for almost 4 years. There was a great deal of apprehension that, 1, the pipeline would never work, and 2, that Sohio was so far stretched out they might very well go bankrupt.
I think the biggest challenge we had of all was when we first commissioned this field and brought together a team of people from all over the states, well, all over the world basically, not only the states, and to start an operation the size of this with a completely new crew that had never worked together before is absolutely amazing.
The field, I think, is probably about 15, 18 miles by 10 or 12 miles. And it doesn't seem like a lot when you're up here driving around because you can see such great distances. But if you start imagining barrels of oil underground 110 feet high and in that kind of distance, that's a lot of oil. This is the biggest reservoir in North America.
While everybody was aware that Sohio had this large amount of oil in Alaska, there was some concerns as how reliable the pipeline would be. Well, after some minor fluttering, the pipeline proved to be very reliable.
Production is going as it should. Everything is functioning the way it was designed to and should. Everything started falling in place and getting to be more of a routine.
I think I like the ongoing challenge. As the field begins to decline, we've got to look at other methods of maintaining production.
The Alaskan oil, which is domestic crude, it's all produced, run through an American pipeline, put on American ships, taken to American refiners on one of the several coasts.
593. You have them. Nice short travel.
Roger, all 3 in transit. I'll call you back when I'm ready to go.
10-4. We'll see Sinclair.
Many of the vessels being used to move Alaskan crude oil for Sohio represent the latest design of what's considered an ecologically sound oil tanker.
All the ships load in Valdez, which is the southern end of the Alaskan Pipeline. The ships then proceed to West Coast ports for delivery to West Coast refineries. A good portion of it then is taken down to Panama, where we now have one shoreside terminal. The smaller tankers, which can transit the canals, reload the cargo for delivery to the Gulf and East Coast ports.
I think we've put together, in a very short time period, the nucleus for an excellent marine organization.
What's the barge situation up in San Francisco?
We're responsible for all matters pertaining to moving the vessels, both at sea and coming in and out of harbors. Since the fleet operates 24 hours a day, it's an all-encompassing job for my staff. You need some good people to make all that work. And I think we have made it work simply because we have delivered all of the oil. We have done it with minimum accidents, no major oil spills. I think that's pretty much an accomplishment. That's pretty much what we set out to do.
They are aware of the high water, and they're talking with the Coast Guard and the pilots.
0600 on the second, you want them further, is that right? 10 cents, okay.
Now, we've gotten through this most important phase in the company's evolution. The crude production is on, it's being marketed well, the company's earnings are up, and there's a large cash flow coming into the company.
You know, where is this cash flow now going to be spent over and above retirement of debt? We can think of chemicals, further exploration, where the company is already becoming more and more aggressive.
Well, I think Sohio needs to be exploring for oil in the lower 48, and we need to be looking for sizable targets. And what we're seeing now is the expanded exploration program. There will be funds available for more drilling. It's a big investment, and the risks are very high.
The purpose of a geologist is to define the reservoir that contains the oil. We try to give them the best picture we can of what's down below, 8,500 to 9,000 feet below the surface.
We do have a mission. I think it's very important that we produce oil for our country. And I think we're misunderstood in a lot of respects. The American public, I don't think, realizes the difficulty and the expense of producing oil in this country. And it's a difficult job.
Sohio and the entire oil industry are being studied and restudied and studied and pursued and by everybody in government these days. And while the company does have a great scope to determine its own future, they have to operate within the framework of the tax laws as determined by the Congress and the different states, the regulations in terms of what products can be made and how they're distributed, and a number of other regulatory, I call them hindrances, established by the government.
I've met Sohio's top management. I have a good deal of confidence in their ability, but usually the test of management is, at least at a given point in time, is the test of history, and history is changing. I think right now, Sohio essentially is a management with tremendous fiduciary responsibilities and sense of responsibility. I think they're intelligent. I think they have one heck of a job ahead of them. I think they'll succeed. And if I'm right, I would certainly say that this is a well-managed company.
I think that over the next decade or so, we will see Sohio develop a lot more operating interest within the lower 48 states. They announced that they were acquiring Webb Resources, and the main asset within Webb Resources was a large block of acreage within the continental U.S. And I would think you'll see an active exploration program on that acreage.
Every drop we pump from the Prudhoe Bay oil field represents a depletion of that tremendous asset. We're investing heavily in further development of the field, but we're also pursuing potential sources of energy elsewhere, so that in the long range we will continue to replenish our energy resources.
And we continue to replenish the vitality of another primary resource, the communities embracing our operations and our people.
And tonight's winner is a corporation who has done an enormous amount for all communities, including our own. And the winner of the Corporation Award of the Year is Sohio.
We want to show that we are a responsible citizen, that we do care for our communities, that we do care for the level of life here, and we're trying to enrich it.
I think in the final analysis, we're left with the conclusion that Sohio is an energy company. It's an energy company in oil, probably the strongest in the United States, an energy company in chemicals by definition, petrochemicals, via coal and via uranium. And my bet would be that 5 to 10 years from now, Sohio will essentially remain an energy company.
Marketing is the traditional strength of the company. We've built on that base and we're diversifying into many other energy-related areas. Today we're expanding into broader areas of science and technology. We're just beginning and we're conducting some ongoing research to develop methods to produce and efficiently use some of the less conventional energy resources, including such things as solar and biomass energy. We're also instituting programs to develop the potentials of laser technology, and we're following up a unique coal gasification process which we think has great promise. We'll continue to explore for energy sources to replace those that the nation consumes.
In past years, Sohio has responded well to changes in market demand. I think today we're living in a different world, and we just can't wait for future developments to take place. We have to anticipate, to plan, to explore, in order to seek answers to the difficult problems that are facing this entire nation.
If and when there is a dramatic shift in the way this country utilizes energy, we ought to be in a good position to meet those needs. Sohio's strategy is to build on its heritage for tomorrow.